or it's been crossed off the list, not needed, but we can get into that later. And also we invited Andrea to our team, and you'll hear her today giving some updates on what we've been working on. So just gonna zoom out for a second and get us to the Sprint 12 section of our board. And Elise is going to walk us through some of the goals we set out to do for this sprint.
Thanks, Michelle. Before we start, just want to call out the fact that we are, for those of you that joined a little bit late, we're really keeping an eye on the numbers. And I also want to just acknowledge the diversity of folks that we have with us today. I think this is the first time that we actually have one of our partners with us today, a financial aid officer from one of the institutions. So super excited for you to join us, Stephanie. And other folks from across government pop in to our demos. So you might see someone from Safety and Solicitor General. You might see someone from Health. So we are really open. So just super excited to see such a group of folks.
Welcome.
So yeah, welcome. It's exciting. This is the beginning of what is going to come. We're going to have more and more external folks. I'm looking forward to the day where maybe we even have a student joining us. Wouldn't that be awesome? Not just Avery and not just our staff that are students, but folks that are outside in the real world. You never know what's going to happen. So Sprint 12 has been busy. We were focusing on getting environments set up. We're going to share a little bit of information with you. Some technical side, making sure that we have backups of our system, because all this hard work, we don't want to lose any of it. We're going to show you some pretty exciting piece about configuring the award, specifically full-time at this point, but super exciting. And of course, some background stuff. In order to do that, we need to have a list of programs. So getting some stuff set up there. The UX UI team have been reconnecting with Andrea as our newest member, planning out what they're going to do. Also, the idea of them in a future state, rather than using some of the Figma, which are those flat two-dimensional pictures they've been showing you, actually doing some of that work in the Forms.io, so in the system, which will give us a much more dynamic presentation, but it'll also be one step closer to being done. And of course, we have started, now that we've got application kind of farther along, assessment farther along, we've started to think about confirmation of enrollment and notice of assessment. So you're going to see some of the output of that today. The piece that I'm super excited about and can't wait for you to see is just the advancement of the application. I think folks will recall that a couple sprints ago, we showed you a workflow. Last sprint, we then show you these two-dimensional application. You're going to see the application in the system today. It's a much more dynamic. So depending on how you answer, some questions will pop up. Not perfect, not done yet, but a much more dynamic presentation of the full-time, part-time application. Super excited about that today. And also just making sure that you can see, how does this fit from the student experience? We've spent a lot of time talking about the institution user experience, and so starting to shift a little bit back to the student experience. So there's a couple things I just want to highlight from the business context kind of a thing, just to set the stage so that you're not surprised when you see it. So I've already mentioned the application, but I did just want to flag that what we're going to show you, we absolutely know there's a couple of pieces still missing. First of all, the PD piece is still missing, and we're working on that. And secondly, intensity. So that is still missing. So that's the functionality that's going to help us figure out, is the student applying for full-time or part-time? And we're working on that piece, but it's not built yet. The other thing I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of is this idea. We've talked about programs and offerings, and you know that we're moving into a new place where there's a program that's approved and then there's offerings, and those are two separate but connected pieces. The idea is that as much as possible, institutions will preload their programs and offerings into the system. And this is all institutions, not just the publics that preload using the institutional appendix currently, but that all institutions will have the opportunity to add their programs into the system, have them be validated, and then appear for the student. And so that is going to replace the current PED process as well. Of course, there's going to be situations where they're not able to preload a particular program, or maybe a student is going part-time, or there's something unique for that student. And so in the past, we would have had an Appendix 3 process. Just want to give you the heads up that we're starting to refer to that process as a Program Information Request, or a PIR, because we got to have an acronym. And that is the process that's going to happen. So you're going to see some of that today. What happens if the program that they want isn't there? Or what happens if the offering isn't there? And we're going to trigger that. So we'll show you that today. Also just wanted to remind folks that in addition to this project, there's other activities that are happening. And because we're moving to a digital by default approach, that means that all institutions, all institutions will sign in to the system and do their work in the system. They're not going to be faxing us a document or sending us a confirmation of enrollment. They will need to sign into the system and confirm enrollment digitally. And so there's some work being done now through Rebecca and Phil and the institutions and programs team to start inviting institutions to come into the system, to move into digital. So we want to help people get used to that idea as early as possible, so that they also have their Business BCE ID in place by the time we go live in the spring for them as well. We're going to talk more about this on a Wednesday, but I did just want to make sure that folks are also aware that all of the mini projects that we had going on are done, with the exception of 2. One of them is not going to be done until the end of the project, because that's about metrics and measuring. And so we're going to do that all the way through. But the final project that we were making some business decisions about related to calculating the award. And so we have moved forward, and a decision has been made about how we're going to calculate the award. We're not going to continue with 3 different approaches. We're going to move forward with a single consolidated approach to calculate the award. I'm not going to get into all of the details about that today. Jacob and Phil Davidson have done some amazing work around that. And I think what we're going to do is ask them to come to one of our business meetings and share with you some more. There's some great presentation material about how we reached that decision and what's the impact of that decision. But just wanted to let you know that, so that when you're seeing the assessment calculator later this morning, you'll understand that we're going to use a single consolidated approach to assess our awards as it relates to full-time and part-time. And we'll be doing that on a weekly basis, not a monthly basis. So without further ado, just a quick reminder again, there's going to be spelling mistakes. There's going to be some awkward language. You might even see text to be put here. So it's not done perfect. If you're seeing some things and have some suggestions for us, please throw it in the chat or send us a note. And just a reminder that, again, we are trying to build a main road and then some pathways that get people back on the main road. So as much as possible, we're not going to build 17 roads. We're going to build 1 main highway and a few secondary roads that get people back onto that main process as quickly and efficiently as possible. So hopefully you'll see that. And if you have some ideas or suggestions or concerns, please let us know. So I'm going to pass the baton back to you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Kind of
like
the
arrows at IKEA. Yeah. So which way do I go? So we've showed you a lot of little snippets of little pieces from student to institution, and we're aware that we haven't been showing you how that fits together in the whole story. So we have what's called the table of contents. Some of you may have seen it. based on what's called business architecture. Some people call it the blueprint. I call it the placemat. Well, I like to color on it as if I was at a restaurant and a child with crayons. Where are we? So at the bottom of the mural, this is something that's presented to project board, but we thought we would maybe show this to you every 2 sprints to show you where we're at. It shows a bit of status, and I'm going to let Elise walk us through this.
Thank you. I forgot about that. When it's out of sight, out of mind, right? So this is the status report that we're using for project board. What you are seeing is each of the themes. Those are each of the columns, and you're seeing the themes that are in scope for the minimum viable product. So it's not all of the themes, although most, but there's a few themes that are out of scope. That's why you're not seeing 8 or 10 or 11. What you're also seeing underneath, what you're also seeing underneath each of the themes in the top left-hand corner of each box is an epic. Remembering that we've got themes, epics, features, and then user stories. So you're seeing an epic, and then the features that we have identified in that table of contents that we showed you a little while ago. And those are the epics that are in scope. There are some that are out of scope, so there was just too many to put on here. So out of scope epics are not here. So for example, under manage student account, one of our epics is create and update the student account. And the epics that, features that are related to that epic are login, create account, update profile information. Those are blue because we've said they're pretty much complete. Now, are they 100% complete? What I would say done, ready to go public? No, but they are absolutely built, and we're working on making some final tweaks. So that epic, I'm gonna say it publicly, we believe is complete. You'll notice that there's a lot of tickets that are in green, and in green means that we're working on it. And it's a very wide brush. It could mean that we're working on it and the UX UI team is just starting to design some items, or it could mean that we're actually far along in the process and it's about to be built. So that's a very wide green. But what you're seeing is a whole bunch of things that are started and are in progress. You're also seeing a bunch of stuff which is gray, and that means we haven't started it yet. We're not there. That being said, I'm hoping that what you're going to notice is that we have started and are in progress most of the items needed for the full-time and part-time applications. The biggest area that's gray is located under theme 2, and those are the other applications: tuition waiver, loan forgiveness, YEEF. Those are, we haven't started those yet. Our thinking is we'll work on those in the fall once we get the main stuff sorted out here. So this is just a super high level map of where we're at and what's going on. So if you were ever kind of wondering, oh, I wonder if they started on that, it would be a good idea to come back to the mural. We'll update this. We update it monthly for project board. So we thought we'll add this here so that you can see what we're reporting out to project board. And then we'll go from there. You can see that we have worked our way all the way through, and Roop is going to show us a really great workflow this morning that says not only have we, for full-time and part-time, got the application started, students can log in, they've got the application started, they are now able to submit an application which includes program and designated institution information. We are working on notice of assessment and confirmation of enrollment. So you can see how we're starting to roll into theme number 7, which is the financial piece, which is where we're going to get to next, which is once we figure out what a student is going to be awarded, how do we disperse it? So it's pretty exciting, the amount of progress that we've made. So we'll show this to you on a monthly basis.
It's ugly by design, just because we don't have time to make it pretty.
Yeah, you pick your battles. And there's probably some spelling mistakes in there. My apologies. But super excited. Can't wait to see what goes blue for next time.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to welcome Andrea to discuss they've welcomed Andrea to our team the beginning of last sprint. And she brought some really great ideas to the table, and they got together. I think they even had a burrito together. Got to have a burrito when you get to know someone. And they came up with some new ways to improve their process moving forward. So why don't you share what that is, Andrea?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so I had not knowing anybody in person, and I like to get to know people in person. It's a lot easier. I suggested we go for coffee, and Root bettered me and said, let's go for lunch. Let's go for burritos. So it ended up being Taco Tuesday. So we went for Taco Tuesday lunch and got to know each other a bit, which was nice. And, talked a little bit about work stuff and, who you are and what we want to work on and sort of what our skill sets are and what we want to learn and what we want to take on. And how, when two people had divided up all the work, how we were going to now incorporate a third person in it. So one thing that I had noticed when I came on and just started reviewing everything was really the lack of accessibility in what had been designed so far and had been built. Accessibility, my team is going to start rolling their eyes now. They know it's my big thing. It's what I'm really passionate about. I suggested that that's what we do going forward. So that's definitely a change in our standards. So one thing we're going to do going forward is everything is going to be built based on accessibility standards. Accessibility, really, just to explain it so everybody else can be tortured by it as well, is accessibility is the practice of making things usable. It's really quite simple. It's just that. It's about removing barriers for those who would struggle or be left out. A friend of mine who also works a lot in this field, he describes it in the best way. He said, like, think about Braille on elevator buttons. It doesn't make any difference to me how the button works, if Braille is there or not. But if I rely on Braille and it's not there, it makes all the difference in the world to me. So that's why I'm really big on accessibility, because it makes everything really inclusive. So everything going forward is going to be designed. You can build things accessible or you can build them not accessible, and it's just as easy to do it with accessibility, and then you don't have to go back and retrofit. So moving forward, we're going to be building everything towards these accessibility standards. Everything that has already been done will have to have some work done on it to make sure that it meets the standards of accessibility. Part of accessibility, is also is plain language. And for those of you that don't know what plain language is just a style of language writing that makes things easier to read and clear and concise. 45% of British Columbians are functionally illiterate, or they don't speak English as their first language, or they have a disability. And plain language helps understanding, it helps translation. It just overall makes things easier for people. So that's why I'm really big on it as well. So going forward as well, we're going to be using plain language. We're going to be changing things so they are plain language. Mobility first is going to be the other one. I think it's really important for students that we build mobility first. We can't operate on the assumption that everybody, like all of us, are sitting here in front of our government-issued laptops and our big monitors. Not everybody has means. So we are going to build everything so you can use it as a mobile first. Mobile first is just like accessibility. If it works on a mobile, it works on everything. But if you don't build it mobile first, it may not work well on your mobile. And then, if you have any type of a disability as well, it just makes it that much more challenging. So we want to make this as user-centered, student-centered, and easy to use as possible. And when we do that, everybody wins that way because it makes it easy for everybody. The other thing we're going to do is do more regular usability testing when we're building for students. I'd like to do usability testing.
Oh, there's a doggy.
Usability testing in every sprint, test just a little bit. Fortunately, it's a bit easier to have access to students. I actually have two of my own, 18 and 22-year-olds, one entering post-secondary and the other one in post-secondary. So, we can easily test between, our friends, family, our children's friends. It will be easy just to put something quickly in front of them. Test this out. Does this work? I know if I put the notice of assessment in front of my 18-year-old, she would have not any understanding of it. It would not really make a lot of sense to her. That's part of what I'm going to be working on right now. I've started doing the research on it, but just regular usability testing. So we're not trying to design stuff like with how we would see it and how we understand it. I've got a lot of work experience and life experience, so it makes more sense to me, but to my 18-year-old, she wouldn't get it. So regular usability testing. So we're building with that user lens all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. Looking forward to seeing how that all takes shape. Okay. Root, you're going to walk us through institution details page and showing us a journey map with a focus on confirmation of enrollment.
For sure. Skipping the details page, or should I?
Just blast through the details page super quick. Yeah.
Here's a super exciting thing. How do I, as an institution, update my information? Do I have to call people at SABC? No, because you have to go to the Manage Institutions section up here. You just go to your details page. Right here, there's a big old button that says Edit, and you can go in there and edit relevant information. There's a few things that we won't allow you to edit just because it means that it requires kind of a designation renewal or a little bit more paperwork. But for quick hit things like who's our primary contact for the institution, you can easily change that. Oops, our website changed to a .ca. Let's do that. You can do that. You can save that. So that is how you update your institution's profile. And then once you're done that, it quickly just goes through. Maybe we care, maybe we don't care to know about all this information. Of course we do. So like you just want to double check, you can do that. But it's something that's self-serve. So another way that institutions can come in and update their information. It's a light touch thing. It doesn't require us to do extra work, which is great. The next thing I want to talk about after this is our application itself. So this is an exciting step. Last time we got together, I spoke to you about how an institution would complete a program information request, or when a student does their application but they don't have all the information about their program, and how an institution can add that information in and help us generate that notice of assessment. So let's talk a little bit about the application lifecycle. So what we've done is we've taken that program information request work we did previously, and also the work that we need to do on confirmation of enrollment. And we've created kind of like the life cycle of how things get from a completed application right down to funding getting into that student's account. So there's a few things here. So what you're seeing here is what we like to call a user journey map. But in the case here, it's a application journey map. And there's a few kind of things that you'll notice here. You've got the statuses, that's kind of system statuses across the top, just for our information. We've got kind of the actions that are being performed by the student, actions that are going to be performed by the institution. And then down here, we've got kind of our system actions that happen in the background magically by the work the development team is doing. So over here, let's kind of kick into the happiest of happy paths. And that is a student completes an application, and lo and behold, all the information that they need are in the drop downs. Their school information is there, their program information is there, and the offering or the intake of that programmer is also there. So they can just select. Once they've completed their application, our system kind of, we're going to go down to the system level here. We're going to generate that notice of assessment, and then it's going to get sent over to the students. And now on that notice of assessment, the student's going to have a few options. They can decide whether or not they want to take the student loan as well as the grants that they're able to receive, or they can just pick their grants, or they can cancel this process outright and say, wait a minute, I don't want this anymore. So yep, go ahead. No, never mind. Okay. So yeah, and then there's a bit of a cool off period. So we're going to allow for some time to take place before we move them into that confirmation of enrollment step. And at that step, you're waiting on your institution to confirm that you're going to take this program. And from this step, they have a few options. This is the institution now. They can either confirm that student's enrollment. Yes, they're going to go here at this program at this date. They can deny the application, or they might say, wait a minute, there's an edge case with the student. We need to edit this student's program information based on something. So maybe it's a cost thing, maybe it's a tuition remittance thing. I'm not sure what it could be, but they would be able to edit that. And what that would mean is it would take them back and they would be reassessed. And so then again, the student would be able to see that new notice of assessment, double check if everything's as they think it should be. And then there's that cool off period one more time, at which point the institution can finally confirm that enrollment. Now, based on when they are or how far away they are from their study start date, 48 hours to 21 days, let's say, you then can, disperse that student's funding, and at which point the application will be completed. And then finally, that status is going to be updated within our system. And yeah, that's the student's application journey. Now, within this, you'll notice a few kind of interesting things. Let's say we went back to the beginning and they didn't have that program information fully completed. This would then trigger that program information we talked about last time. Once that is completed by the institution, it would then generate that notice of assessment. And then it kind of gets them back onto that main highway, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning of the meeting here. So this is the main highway that we want everyone back onto whenever possible. They might take a couple side roads and maybe a U-turn here and there, but they always get back to this main workflow. And that's the application lifecycle.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roop. One thing that is missing here, in case everyone's like, where's the MSFAA? It's just not on this, but we know it exists and we know that it belongs around the confirmation of enrollment stage. So
Kind of right
it's
about
there.
Yeah.
It's just not on the swim lane. And Roop is currently working on wireframing that confirmation of enrollment stuff so institutions can easily self-service that. Okay, Lynn, we tried to get to this last week, is going to show us student navigation. It's just going to give us the picture of how we're laying out the site. And then the devs are then later going to show us how that actually looks navigating through the tool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. I'll take it away from here. So a while ago, you guys saw the institution account dashboard site map. Since then, we've created a student account site map that looks like this. You'll notice that it's a lot less items for the student experience. What that looks like in terms of wireframes, I'll just show you quickly here. What we have in the site map is that we have a student profile, a place to manage your applications, notifications as well, and also your account settings down there. So what that translates into wireframes is that it looks like this. I'll show you what the dashboard looks like currently. So this is after you log in with your BC Services card, you arrive at a page that looks like this. This is what we call the home page or the dashboard. On the home page, we have a navigation at the top that has application. This is where you manage your applications. For your notifications, this is where you manage your notifications. Your profile, so things as your name, storing your PD status, things will that will live here in the profile. And then me is where the notification things such as like your settings, all the things like log out button, things like that. So we kind of went back and forth a little bit about just the profile itself and where it belongs. You know, we had discussions on where we think it should belong. Should it go under the me, your initials, or should it be outside? So we think that it should just be outside because this is where you're storing your information. It's going to be reused in applications. It also is a good way to save a click for a user to go into, instead of going into me and then clicking on profile, you have your profile right in front of you in the navigation so that you can just go in. If you need to change in any personal information, you can from that screen. And then that will be, again, you'll be able to review that same profile information when you're doing an application there. So that is just the student navigation in a nutshell. You'll notice that it's a lot more simplified than the institution navigation, but that's just how it is on the institution side. There's a lot more features and functionality that needs to be there. For their student experience, it's not that much. You know, students are coming in, they're applying for funding, they're looking at any notifications, they're looking at their profile, and they're out, essentially, right? So that is the student navigation in a nutshell. And then just before I end off, I'll just kind of show you what it looks like from a bird's eye view, you'll notice that we're almost kind of there in terms of completing the student application. You'll notice that there are some blank screens here that we're looking at doing in the future as well, but just wanted to give you kind of a bird's eye view on how that's looking in terms of the navigation. That's it for me. Pass it over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, over to, oh, I'll share my screen. How about that? For a brief moment, I'm sure. Okay, we're going to some architectural setup and decisions that have been made. This sprint was focused very heavily on just kind of resetting and doing some technical debt and some foundational setup. We also had a long weekend and people took advantage of that on each side of the weekend too. So we didn't get as much done. We sure got a lot. So Signori, would you like to show us the high-level backup strategy?
Yeah, sure. I thought that Andrew was going to do that.
Oh, did you guys not connect?
Sorry.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
I can. It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Signori, put you on the spot.
no
Okay,
worries.
Schwenker is going to show us.
All good. Just gonna talk about it real quick first. So in OpenShift with the platform team, they provide basically a whole bunch of templates for us to be able to do our backups. So as for others that know, when you have databases, you need to back them up. So if you lose something, it's basically for disaster recovery. If you lose something, if everything's gone, you can at least restore from a backup. So particularly what we did in this sprint is leveraged, I believe I put some links, but I will share them as well, is basically we took what the OpenShift team calls a common component, but basically we took the backup containers, I'll use the fancy word there, and basically got them installed in our dev environment to get them backing up. And then what we did in that as well is we also automated the process of getting it up and running, because part of what you have to do when using pretty much anything is you always have to customize it to exactly what your project needs, because there's no way to make a template perfect for everyone just to use. So we got that basically imported into our house, and then got it up and running, and then automated so we can just get it up and running, customized to our project quickly.
Good.
And then for those of you who are interested on the technical side, that bottom left picture there of the two little hockey team looking icons is what the backup containers, sorry, left one, Michelle, is what the backup containers look like in OpenShift. That's just there as a reference. It doesn't have to mean much.
Yeah, we can give a deep dive to you guys whenever. Okay, Guru, you've created some more environments for us.
Yes.
Would you like to explain?
Hi, team. Yes, I just wanted to talk a little bit like Schwenker, like I just wanted to initially in our team, we did have only one environment, I would say, like for like development environment, but currently we cannot just mitigate the same environment to production. So we need to have multiple environments so that we can just mitigate the risk from the development teams. Like if they do any mistakes or any bugs, we need to mitigate it to different environments. So we need to have multiple environments. So initially when we created the dev environment, we did a manual deployment to our OpenShift clusters. So clusters in the sense like in our OpenShift environment. So what currently we wanted to do is like in this sprint, we wanted to automate all the processes, like when we are deploying to a new environment or when we are creating a new infrastructure itself, we need to automate those processes, and it should be easy. You guys might be aware, like we are using all the OpenShift open source applications for our development environment, right? So they do have a different life cycles, and they do have different cycles of releases in their open source. Every component will have their own open source release cycles. So we need to implement those open source cycles and upgradations to our product so that it will be like in sync with their releases and it will be up to date. So that is how we do it. So in a easy way, like upgrading your apps in your phone, right? So whenever you want to have a latest upgrade of your apps, then it will be the latest thing. So like that we wanted to do. So let me share the screen here. So this is our dev environment. We did have this whole OpenShift setup already there. We do partner with FormsFlow AI. This is our one of the biggest partner, like where we use the OpenShift. Where we use their application to develop our forms and workflow engines. Okay, so this is the whole. So currently, what did they do is recently they did the release their 4.0 releases. So we wanted to upgrade to their release also. So as a part of this sprint, we just did an upgradation to the 4.0 release, and also we did create a new infrastructure itself. So if I move to this tab, you can see like there is a test environment here and there is a dev environment over here, right? So we did create completely a new environment itself now. So what it really means in our application is, so usually we did have only this dev application, right? So every development team and also our demos also goes through this dev server and dev URL only. But if something goes wrong, what happens? For example, if somebody is going to push something in the dev server and they had a bug and today we have a deployment, then what we can do is we can go to the test environment and we can just take a backup. Already Schwenker has told about the backup servers, right? I think you can see those backup servers over here, those hockey sticks and hockey stuffs. So we can just take a backup from these servers and we can push it into the test environment. And in a Jiffy, we'll be able to recover every data what we had it in dev servers, and we'll be able to. We do have a new URL now. So this is done. So what we achieved through these kind of things is like the downtime of the servers and the upgradation and the deployments are going to be very minimal now. It's not going to take like half a day or something like that. It's going to be less than an hour. I would say like less than 30 minutes also, to be frank. So I mean, it's going to be so fast. And also like when we have multiple environments, we have fallback servers and we have different environments to do different tasks. Like dev environment, we can do development, and the test environment, we can use it for demo purposes. Or if the UI UX team or the testing team, I mean, in the future, like if anybody is going to do a testing, all the product owners going to do a testing on the test environment, then we can just mitigate it to the test team. So like it's good to have, I would say, like this is kind of an biggest step, I would say, like in the infrastructure part. And tomorrow when we go to, when we are confirmed and when we're going for production, we may need to create another same cluster called as, -prod we'll be having most probably. So what it does is, the same infrastructure will be moved to production in a way like that will be completely abstracted from all other infrastructure. I mean, all other environments. So in a way like it will be abstracted, and every environment can be used for different purposes. That is what it is. And we have did it. Yeah, back to you, Michelle. Yeah.
Mute. Thank you, Guru. So we're all experts now. We can all quit our jobs and become developers, I'm sure. Just kidding. Yeah, so what we liked about that is that we're safe, we have extra environments, and that it's going to be fast to fix. Thank you, Guru. So awesome. Now I'm going to pass it over to Zumati, who's going to show us her recent work on configuring a ward.
Yeah. Hi, am I audible? I'm unable to mute.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, fine. Yeah. I'll share my screen.
Teams is having some fun issues today. It says you're on mute, Zumati, but we can hear you.
Okay. Is my screen visible? Like, because it doesn't allow me to even do that.
Nope.
Okay.
So this morning I had to kick Signori out. Should I kick you out and get you to
Yeah.
log back in? Okay.
Sure.
Let me see where you are. See more? Oh my gosh, I have to filter through 75 people.
I'll try to leave and then join. Okay.
Okay. I found you. Goodbye. I love that power. I wonder if we'll just move on for a second. We'll come back to Sumati when she's back, and we'll just move over. Signori, are you able to share your screen? We're having some issues this morning.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So
After you kick me out.
Signori is going to show us some UI upgrades that we've done, as well as the student navigation that they were able to build.
Yeah. So what we start to do is just try to make the application a little bit close to the Figma. So the UI, UX folks have been showing some screens, and we are just trying to move to something a little bit more similar, not quite the same, but so what we did, we are changing something like the framework that we are using in the background. That doesn't mean too much. For what we can see now, like we have more like the white bar and the logo, and things are gonna be a little bit more Figma. So the logging for both institution and student are a little bit different, and the inside also. So just a second. Gonna show this one first and then navigate the institution. So here the bar again is the same, different. The menus that Link showed us before, they are now here. They weren't before. We are just creating the placeholders to build the pages. So we have the start new application here, the lady waving, everything else. The background is gray now, and we have more placeholders. The profile, as Link mentioned, it's here, readily accessible. You can it's like responsive. We have more placeholders coming for notification settings. So the guy here on the top right, the icon is new also. And so that's the navigation that we are building. This website's a little bit different. And the same is valid for the institution.
Can I just say that there may be some folks like me who didn't see a difference, and that's okay. You're normal. Just people pay attention to different details. So if you're like me going, what's different? I don't see anything. There are subtle changes.
Yeah, bottom line, we need to build more towards Figma. So Figma is our last goal. So we are trying to do that. Here is basically the same. So the bar is now white, the logo is different, the gray in the background. So the navigation is the same as before, but a little bit different. So it's more close to Figma, but still a long way.
So Signori, you were able to copy the components and the fonts and the colors from the Figma and put them into the development.
Yeah, there are small changes, like we are using the BC specific font that has support for indigenous characters, something like that. So it's like really not easy to see that, but we are going towards what we need. Like we need the font to be right. We need like the colors and the feeling that the UI UX is nicely creating to be more what we need. And so that is what we are building. The most important thing that before was not in the right track, and now we can go more in towards the final goal.
Yeah.
And that's it, Michelle. Everything is working before. The navigation in the student has more links waiting to be developed, but that's it.
Awesome. So just asking, did you want to show the student side and like navigating through, or we can imagine it?
I did
You
that.
did? You did, but we
Yeah.
didn't set the stage. So let's, because we were doing it from a UI perspective. So just show us quickly. Thank you.
So students logging in using their BC services card,
That's the student application.
they land on their dashboard.
Mhm.
The dashboard still to be built. Right now
Yeah.
it's just a link. So everything's to be built. We are just adjusting the master layout around it, and that also reflects in the middle. So we have the placeholders here, there, and that's still working as before. There's still things to be adjusted, so the colors are not exactly the same. The messaging spaces, a lot of things to do. It's just like the first step. To us, it's really important to just have that in place to continue it down this path.
Perfect. Yeah. So all the pages are there. Some of them are blank, but it'll be easy to just update them once we have that work from the UX folks.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we could look at the student application and then go to the award, just because that makes sense in the flow.
Sure.
Just
Sure.
And
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm just going to set the stage super quick. So we broke the update the student application into 2 tickets in our backlog. The first one being just get the questions in. And then the second iteration of this ticket is all of the acceptance criteria and validation to be buttoned up next sprint. So what Anne has done is she's got the questions in, she's a gold star, she's gone a little bit further, but all that validation will be complete next sprint. Go
I'm
for it,
sharing
Anne.
screen. Yeah. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this is the, I have logged in as a student, and in the application navigation, this page will be coming, and I can start a new application as a student. And so this is our student form from Form.io, and I'm clicking next. I'm with the first tab, program tab. Here I can able to select the college. So these are the college that are listing from the institution directly. I'm selecting this college. And if my college is not in this drop down, then student can also select this drop down, this checkbox, and it will be giving this like info. And once a student select the college, he can select the program. I'm selecting the engineering program. Once and again, if the program is not listed, he can select the checkbox, and this fields will be coming there where he can he or she can add the program, with these are the fields for adding that program, like program name, program description, and start and end date. So now, as of now, I am selecting the program from the drop down. And when the program is selected, a student has the next option to select the offering. Again, the offering will in the drop down offering will be coming from the our application where the institution admin has added. If the offering is not listed in the drop down, student can select this, and again he can add the start date and end date of the offering. So now I'm adding a start date and end date. And student can also able to select a location. Going next. And now to the personal information tab. Here a student get a nice overview of the information from the BCID profile. And here a student can verify all the information. These are read-only fields, and if the information is verified, they can click I confirm. And next, going to the status, they can select the status. If they are protected or permanent resident, they can upload the proof of that. Again, going to the next question, are they BC resident? So if they can select yes, and they select no, they have a set of another questions where they can select, and from these questions, if it's
they select other option, then they will be having this field to upload the supporting documents and explain the situation. So now here I'm selecting S. And the next question is this indigenous person. If they select S, again, they have another question where they can select options from this. This question, I'm selecting, I'm going for a happy path. And yeah, here the next question where student can select the graduation date. So I'm selecting a date which was the previous month date. And here, if the student is working for a full-time job of like 32 per week, then if we select S, he will be having this info. And if it's no, he can go on. I'm selecting, okay. And here, in the last question in this tab, it's about the trusted contact. So if student want to add any trusted contact, they can select S, and he can add the number of selected contacts over here. Like that, it's like by clicking this button, he can add any number of trusted contact. Go to the next tab. It's a family information tab. Here, the student can select on the first day of his or her class, he will be single, separated, or married. So if we select single, and if he has no dependent, then the parent information tab, this tab will be showing up. If he is married and with no or S dependent, then the spouse information tab will be showing here over here. Okay, now I'm going with the married, selecting a date of marriage. Okay, here I have selected like, do you have any dependent or not? Here, student have option to add dependent. Again, here they can add multiple dependent. For example, I'm adding one dependent. I'm selecting the date of birth. So now this age is calculated with the first day of the offering. For example, in our first tab, we have selected the start date of the offering. From this date as well as from the date of birth of the dependent, the age is calculated. Okay, so here if the student is above 18 years of age, and if he is declared on tax, then there will be option to upload the PD dependent. Okay. Now I'm going selecting this, going to next tab, spouse information. Again, for S, the student will be having this info box. For no, again, he will be asked about the partner income set of questions. Going to the last tab, financial information, second last tab, financial information. Here, they can add the income. They can give their consent. Again, for the financial exception, if the student select S, they will be having this like field, this field to fill. And for others, they can like give their explanation and upload the supporting documents. Same way here also. Yeah, now to the dependent course. So actually, this will depend upon the family information, this field. So, okay. So here, if any of the dependent has a age greater than 12 and he is eligible for tax, then this field will be coming. I will show you. So now this test one dependent is of age 21 and he is declared on tax. So if he is not declared on tax, then that field won't be showing over here. Same way. Okay. If there is a dependent with age less than 12, then this will be showing. Actually, there are two fields. I will add two dependent. Okay, now there are two dependent. One dependent is of age less than 12 and one dependent of age less than, greater than 12 with declared on tax S. So now when you go to financial information, you will be having like these two fields over here. Again, when the student select test, he will be able to add the amount. Now going to the other financial support session. So all this section has like if the student select S, they will be asked to like enter the value under the amount. S, enter, enter. Okay, go to living situation.
UX folks, how long will it take to fill out an application, do you think? 10, 15 minutes?
How long have we been going?
Well, Anne's showing us like some magic behind the scenes, but if a student was going in, what do you think?
It's a good metric. We should measure that.
I think, yeah, I mean, when we get to student usability testing, that's when we would find out, right? Like, that's the thing is like with all of this, we've got our, even if we do our test as an example, we might say, here's your information that you should enter, right? But they won't have that, right? So it's kind of a matter of, we'll aim for the higher end of the times that we think it'll take, right? But yeah, it's something that we can test as we outlined at the beginning of the meeting, right?
Sounds good.
What Anne is also showing, I'm sure folks have identified, is that we are also allowing students to add information, whereas previously they would have had to complete an appeal request form. So a whole other process that takes a significant time, we're front end loading that. So that's going to be a great value add for students as well.
Yeah, going to additional transportation costs here also, if they select other, they will be asked to like fill this form and upload this supporting document.
There's a good example of what would have historically been an appeal. They don't have to wait, get assessed, then appeal. They can provide it up front. So that'll reduce overall time for students.
Yeah, so this is our last step for the confirm submission. Again, they can select I have received the loan amount and select the checkbox and submit their form.
Awesome.
So like if there is a kind of validation, it will be showing in there. And when you click that particular validation error, it will be showing like which field the student hasn't filled. So I have forgot to fill this field. That's why. So now the error is not there. And I can confirm. So submit my application. Yeah, that's
perfect. Thank you so much, Anne. So I would say that's a really good first draft. And next sprint, you're going to be going through with a fine-tooth comb and the due diligence of our acceptance criteria and making sure all those validations are buttoned up. And then we know that there's also feedback coming so that we can enhance this further. So awesome. Thank you. Now, Sumati, if you're able to share your screen, you're going to show us what happens after we hit submit. Sure. And how we calculate, how we're beginning the calculations.
Yep. So am I audible and is my screen visible?
You are.
Okay,
yep.
fine. So let me give a short introduction. Okay, so this is the award calculation that we have automated and digitalized this calculation, right? So if you see here, these are the set of inputs that is required for performing the award calculation. And we again have two categories, one for the federal and the other for the provincial, right? So that's calculation is all about, and we have like around 20 steps or something. Yeah, 20 to 18 steps for the federal and the provincial. At the same time, when you perform the calculation, some of the information are like a maintenance, which may change based on the program year, right? So say, for example, CSGFT, CSGD, and BCAG, these are like a maintenance. Besides this also, in this calculation, you can see in between like some of the informations which are maintained based on the program year. Say, for example, the rate without dependence or some information are like, defined for the system, right? So that's a synopsis of what exactly happening now. Now getting back to what we have done, right? So this is like the workflow diagram that is going to do the calculation. What exactly it does is, it's first getting the data that is required for performing this calculation, which from the application, basically this step talks about. Then in parallel, in order to have a better performance, right? So it does a parallel job. Parallelly, it will calculate the federal assessment, like a award calculation, at the same time like a provincial award. And when both these calculations are done, then it is combined and sent for a review. This step is not like a mandatory, like about config review is just a one-step review where some staff can go and manually review it up, right? It is not mandatory. If it is not required, we will just like directly go and update the system and it will be closing. It's just for our initial phase, we are having this manual review. And you can see here this massive diagram which talks about the calculation that is being done for the federal. So why do we have two separate the processes for doing these calculations is in order to have the better maintenance and changeability. So we just decided to have two separate workflows, one for federal calculations and the other for like a provincial calculation. So you can see here like a pre-calculation step. So before it does and go and do the calculation, it will go and extract all the information that is required from this the BCAG. See, all these things which are like a maintenance wise, they will be updated. So there was a question on the chat, will the system automatically calculate for the past assessment or the past year, right? All we need to do is just go and maintain the years, like 2019 to 2020 or like 2022 to 2023. All you need down the line maintenance is just adding the program years in all this BCAG, CSGD, and CSGD and CSGFT. Like all these things are just maintenance. At the same time, there are also some specific values set for the provincial and federal based on the program year, right? So that has been again like a max limit, like allowable max limits are again extracted from the calculations, and it's done as a maintenance, like a maintainable value. So over a period of time, all you have to do is just go and whenever there is a change, just go and update it up. It is going to work. Okay. So same way, if you look at the sheet, it doesn't have what to do for the family size greater than 7. So we just accommodated anything greater than or equal to will have the same value. So that kind of like little adjustments has been done to that. And yeah, so that's about like how did we achieve it up. So now let's go to the Excel. Okay, and let's give some value over here. And for the demo, what we had done is we even created a sample screen. Okay, so this is my dev environment. For the award calculation testing, we created a sample screen. Okay, so this is exactly going to mimic what you have over here. Okay, so the exact section what we have. So let's fill in some data. The SIN number, I'm just going to give like some random numbers. So federal assessment need, let's give 45,000. It's all given in dollars. So this is a very good formula engine. It always does all the calculations. And study period week, let's give 50. Number of dependents, maybe I'll give 3. I'll just like give 100,000. Maybe is your income. Family size, let's give 5. And let's give the eligibility for all and see what happens. Okay. Yes. So I'm just going to sync up the same data here. 45, what? So number of, it is 100. And 5. Okay, so we have like synced up both these sides, right? So now let's submit it up, okay? So it's actually behind the scene, it's doing the validation. Okay.
And Sumati, the answers to these questions are going to come from the application, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So for this print, we were focused, we have not done the integration. So you can see here, the calculation has been done. It's just like a manual review. As he said, I've just integrated this manual review it. That's the reason it's coming up. So let's go and see the value down. Okay. It's 29,800, 29,800. And over here, it is 7,800. So it matches.
So you're using the mass breakdown calculator to ensure that we're valid with the tests that are being done, or the calculations, pardon me, that are being done in this material. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool that you were able to reverse engineer the spreadsheet into our tool.
Yeah, this is what we had done.
Very cool. Thank you, Sumati. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about the goals for next sprint.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so I think you can see we're making some pretty amazing progress, and so we're going to keep moving forward. Technically, we showed you in the application that students will be able to upload documents. We need to technically figure that out. Where are they going to be stored? All of that kind of stuff. So we're going to work on that. As Sumati showed you, the idea is that we have certain rules and certain values that are used for program year. So we need to be setting up that concept in the system. In order to have an application go from submitted to assessed, we need to validate income with CRA. So we're setting that up. And we also need to make sure that we've planned out behind the scenes how the notice of assessment is going to work. And then, of course, in front of the scenes, the technical folks are going to mock up a new notice of assessment for us. We're going to work on that student homepage. You saw there was just a very generic dashboard. We need to think about what that's going to look like. And also starting to think about what happens when an institution has to report withdrawal. We don't have our restrictions piece of work in yet, so we need to start thinking about that. You'll notice there's a pattern. We do research, then there's a workflow, then there's a wireframe, and then the technical team starts to build it. So we're starting to do some research on restrictions, that tuition remittance piece. We've got lots of business and user stories on that. So we need to start to figure out how are we going to take that information and implement it in the new system. We're also going to wrap up a piece around permanent disability. And how do we manage that? Because that is missing in the application, although you may have seen it referenced in a couple of places there. We also need to do, as Michelle's mentioned, the next pass over the application. Do we have all the rules in place? What are some different pieces, just to keep layering that through? And then, of course, we need to think about this and say, once the student presses submit, what does the institution see of the application? Because of course, what do they need to see in order to be able to confirm enrollment? So starting to think about it from that perspective, but you can see how we're progressing through the process at this point. So that's what we're going to focus Sprint 13 on.
Yes, I've added a few of the questions that came in. I think, Sumati, you answered one of them that came in early in the chat about managing previous year's calculations.
Yeah, and maybe I could just add to that, because I would suggest that for MVP, are we going to preload 1990, 1920 program year, 17, 18? No, I don't think we are. But in a future state, you can see how we could go back to probably 22, 23 at the earliest, and then reassess. And in the meantime, on the rare occasion that we have to do that, we do use the mass breakdown calculator, and we know that we need to be able to edit financial information in the new system. So that's part of the scope of activities.
Yeah.
So I think there's some real support around, Andrea, your comments around accessibility and about how we want to ensure accessibility. And of course, a comment about there is going to be some new accessibility legislation coming out. And so absolutely, that was one of the reasons we want to make sure that we get in front of this so that we are integrating accessibility into our development now rather than having to retrofit it later. So really trying to make sure that we do more thinking about that. And so Andrea's expertise is super valuable for us there.
Yeah, so that's all I pulled out of the chat unless I missed something.
There's a couple that have just come in. So is there any concern that the application site could crash when it goes live from the testing and during peak? Are there any safeguards in place to prevent the site crashing? It's a really good question. Andrew Schwenker, could you help with that from a technical perspective?
Sure. So I did see that question come up just after Subhati was demoing. So just one thing Subhati said there, just to emphasize, is those pages that she was showing about importing the data and then viewing the result is going to be integrated in. That's not how the values are actually going to be like going in and being calculated. So like if the site were to go down, like there is load testing and things to do that are going to happen down the road, obviously, before we go live, about load testing, stress testing, all those types of things. But it's sort of like anything, like if the front end goes down and the student can't submit the application, obviously we can't get their information to do the assessment. But yes, so there is going to be like, we're going to do as much testing as possible before it goes live. But if it was related to those screens that Samati was showing, that's not how the actual assessment and the award config is going to work, because it's going to be integrated in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
oh, sorry.
For technical folks like myself, I'm thinking in a future state, the system crashing, the system is going to be on a server and accessible through the URL, right? So internet. So if a person is having internet issues, it's possible they won't be able to access our system. But is our system going to be more stable, do you think, than it has been in the past?
Right now, like we are putting together like the metrics and stuff to actually compare it to that. It's in line with the one of the mini projects you were originally talking to, Elise there. But there'll be metrics and things for that. Right. But as Mati just said in the chat there, everything we do, so one thing with OpenShift and the platform and how those things work is there's a concept of high availability. So basically every piece that's run, we can scale it, and there are things, I won't use any of the technical jargon, but like there's horizontal auto scaling and stuff to like make the application scalable to handle loads. And so that is all going to come out during the stress testing and all that.
Yeah, Andrew, you can say that we can buy a new computer with a click of a button, and
yeah,
buying another one, we can buy 10 computers in 10 seconds. Or
yeah, it's sort of like your threads on like your computer processor or something. Like if you just need more power, we can increase it.
Right. There's another question from Terry about the appeal items. So this relates to the supporting documentation. So I think you're asking, Terry, is what happens when someone tells a story? Because we still absolutely need to adjudicate that story and decide whether it meets the thresholds for what we would call an exceptional circumstance. So at this point, the thinking or the initial thinking has been that if someone answers the question in such a way that they tell us their exceptional circumstance, that application is going to need to be flagged to be reviewed by our case review team in order to decide whether that exceptional circumstance is valid or not, because it may be a very nice story, but it's not an acceptable exceptional circumstance. So that will trigger a review, a manual process. Daniel's also suggesting that we use our help text and our warning text and our alerts and all of that to make sure that we provide information about what to include in certain areas. And absolutely, Daniel, we've talked about that because we've kind of said, look, if we ask someone to upload a document, we better tell them what kinds of documents are we looking for. If we're asking them to tell us what your income, we need to be able to have a little help tip that explains what should you be including in here. So absolutely, definitely want to do that. What you're seeing today is the rough version of that. So and if you have some suggestions of language, that would be great. But again, as much as possible, we'll try to use the policy language, other things that are already there. In-depth business case study of the crash of WestJet. Yeah, that was interesting. So it'll be interesting to see for us to be monitoring and ensuring that we can do that load testing. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on, because we are going to be dependent on the internet, which we are now, to be fair. It's just a little different. Supporting documentation fits the story. Yep, that's a good question. Again, when someone submits a document because we ask them to, or they tell us more of their story, we need to have manual intervention. We need our experts, our case review folks, to review that and see whether or not it meets the threshold. So we're showing you that a student can do it. We haven't shown you the other process, which is going to be, oh, this application is flagged, and a case review adjudicator will need to go in and review and decide what to do with that application for sure. Will help text for the application live on the Help Center on website as well, which is currently available? That's a good question. So we need to make sure that everything's in alignment, right? We don't want to say something different on the website than what we say on the application. So we'll need to do that. Where it lives, I think, are you asking, is there one source of truth document? I'm not sure the answer to that. Technically, this is inside of our system, which is separate from our website, but we do need to make sure that those two things are aligned. And our website is out of scope for the MVP, but this is where minor adjustments is in scope to make sure that we don't say something different on the application form than what's stated on the website. Were there any other questions or comments that we missed out? I feel like those are plain language. Metric, yeah, just so folks know, it was interesting. Tatiana and I were having an interesting conversation this morning. The number of application errors has been identified as a metric, folks may recall, for the new system. And right now we have a number of application errors that have to be manually intervened in order to get the application back on track. And so certainly the number, but also the type of application errors is something that Tatiana is doing some work on, so that we can make sure that those problems we have fixed in our new system. So we'll be able to bring that forward to you and what we're going to do in the coming weeks.
Sorry, I'm flying blind. I can't see the chat.
Stephanie has a question in the chat, Elise, about if a student decides later that they want the loan, having chosen only the grant initially, what would that process be?
Right, good for you, Stephanie. You flagged. So just a reminder about grant only. So grant only is an area that we identified as a strategic opportunity that we absolutely wanted to build into the system. At this point in time, we are going to build it into the system, but not turn it on. However, Lori and some of the work that her team is doing as it relates to the tuition waiver program mandate is going to put forward a request for a decision to be made about enabling that functionality. And so we're hopeful that by about September, we should get a decision. So if we enable the functionality to allow grant only, at this point in time, we had identified the fact that student is eligible for say 3,000 in grant and 2,000 in loan. If they select no, thank you, I don't want the loan, they're still eligible for it. And so absolutely, we want to come up with a process that would allow a student to come back and say, I changed my mind. I'm eligible for that extra 2,000 and I need it. Could I please have it? Obviously within that application period, but that is what our initial thinking is at this point. We'll have some more information with you once we get that decision from executive about whether or not we'll be enabling grant only functionality in the fall. Project might be required to ensure that all web content. Yeah, we need to have conversation about web and MVP and how they align and where they don't, for sure, James. Heads up for your team. Good point. Policy and procedures have been separated, so over time there's been less ED to ensure alignment, for sure. Thank you, Terry. Absolutely true. So part of this process is a reassessment. Folks may have noticed in the work that Roop showed is that students can fill out an application, they can submit an application, and they can edit that application themselves without having to submit Appendix 7. They can edit that document all the way through until confirmation of enrollment. That will trigger a new notice of assessment. And then if at confirmation of enrollment, the institution changes some information, then that too will trigger a reassessment as well. And then of course the student will need to potentially take action if they don't want things to continue as is. Any other questions or comments for today? We're getting close to the end of our time, but pretty exciting. Can I just say it's pretty awesome where we've got to. The application is looking really good. I think folks can start to see it and feel it and experience what the student would experience and start to see how the work behind the application will start to calculate the award using the rules that have been provided. So we're getting closer, and of course soon we'll have a notice of assessment and then get to confirmation of enrollment. So pretty big steps. It is impressive, isn't it? It's we have a great development team that are doing some amazing work, and just really appreciate how far we've come. This is sprint 12. And look at what we've done, and that little map at the bottom with some things that are blue, but a whole bunch of green is a huge testament to the work the team has done over the last 12 weeks. So super excited to see what we can get to by the end of the summer. Is there a plan for when the product will be available to public? No, not yet. Although I can, spoiler say that absolutely there's conversation about do we need to wait till June? And we also know very clearly that institutions will need to use the system before June. In order for a system to be ready for students that have the programs loaded and the offerings loaded into the system already today, institutions start doing that as early as April. So we know we need to have that system available to them by, let's say, April of next year. Don't have a specific date yet. Maybe we can even get it a little sooner. Don't know yet. We're going to try at this point to focus on, let's get through the fall, or pardon me, the summer, and let's talk about that once we get to September a little bit. We'll probably have a better idea of where things are landing. But I think you can see there's a whole bunch of work done, particularly on that institution side. And the sooner we can get institutions access to the system or some kind of a test environment, the better. We've also made a commitment to institutions to share with them information about how they're going to need to organize their programs and their offerings by September. And that is a commitment that we will absolutely honor, so they can start to think about how are we going to enter these programs into the system. Maybe it's exactly as they do it now, or maybe they want to make some changes. So that's something we'll be working on, and liaising with our advisory group, who we meet with on a monthly basis. So we do have sector representatives that we speak to regularly about this.
Yeah, and certainly we want to not overwhelm them with, you have to set up your account and all your programs all at once.
Absolutely.
It may be chunked into releases, like just come in, set up your account, get your users in, get your location details in. So how does that feel?
Yeah.
Now let's upload your programs.
Yep. Yeah. So starting to talk about that, but nothing, no dates yet. April 2022. That's my vision. Don't hold me on that though, but definitely we know that institutions need about 3 months minimum to get all of their programs set up. That's what we give them now. And so we certainly don't want to shortchange them time, although we're hopeful that it'll take less time. And we're also talking about perhaps for the first time loading all of their programs and setting up. We might be able to come up with some bulk process for them. That's absolutely our goal. I shouldn't say might. We will come up with a bulk process for them. That's absolutely part of our scope. So I expect that institutions will be using the system by April, and then we will likely, I had hoped earlier, but I think there's no way around managing the program year piece for students and just the complexity of that. So I anticipate that students won't start using until what we would normally call a program year is when we would release the new system for next year's applications.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're at the end of our time, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. As always, you can send us an email or find us on IM and make sure that we get your feedback that way.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.